everyone. Happy Monday. Hope you all had a great weekend. Thank you so much for joining us. We have been creating a lot of content lately about food. While we can remove things like personal care and beauty products from our daily routine, human beings need food to survive. Unfortunately, many foods are made with preservatives, artificial ingredients, and other additives that can make food addicting, disrupt our hormones, and even promote anxious behaviors. These are troublesome for adults as they can lead to infertility and health problems. However, these ingredients are even more troublesome for kids who are still developing mentally and physically. That's why we're really excited to be chatting with Jess Sherman. Jess is an award-winning nutritionist, author, coach, and family health educator based out of Ottawa. We're going to discuss how food can trigger anxiety, how sugar impacts children's health, and signs that your children might need to change their diet. Hello. Thank you so much for taking the time and join us today.
Oh, geez. Is my connection okay?
Now it seems to be okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Yeah. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Yay. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you became a family health expert.
Sorry about that. I just, oh, that's better. So yeah, I mean, thanks for having me because I love talking about, kids and health and really just helping them be the best that they can. I came at this through teaching, through education. I was a teacher for a lot of years. And when I started to learn more about the impact of nutrition and chemicals and sleep and poop and gut health and all of this stuff, I really started to see my students in a different light. And I needed to share that with parents because parents were feeling like so frustrated and confused. And as teachers, we were feeling so frustrated because we just really, got into education to help kids. And then, they can't focus, they can't learn, they're anxious, they're moody, they are exhausted, they're hyper, and, all over the map. And so everyone was just super, frustrated. And then when I learned about the biological pieces that were contributing to all of this, that, had nothing to do with educational tactics or even the amazing parenting that these parents were doing, it was like internally generated stress that we couldn't see, but was having such an impact. So that's when I stopped teaching and I started working with parents to, alleviate this stress. And lo and behold, better behaviors in the classroom, better connections at home, better sleep, better skin, all of the things. So that's what I do now.
That's like addressing the root cause of the problem.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up because the more I do this work, the more I realize like there isn't a root cause. Kids are stressed. They're in this cyclone. I call it the cyclone of stress. It's everything is just feeding everything else. So it's all good. It's all, the parenting tactics, the educational tactics, the environmental stuff, the biological stuff that I'm doing, nutrition. It's all important. They're just different aspects, coming at they're all roots. Like they're all roots because they feed each other.
Yeah, is that why you specialize in helping nurture resilient kids? Is that what you call it, resilience? Because there's like so many of these aspects.
Well, I call resilience is flexibility in the face of stress, right? So it's able to take a stressful situation and grow from it and respond and react to all of these things. Whenever something stressful comes at you, whether that is, an illness, a virus, you can have, right? You can have immune resilience, or you can have, it's, more to do with the stressful life situations, all of that. And so resilience is in the center. And then I'm looking for all of the different factors that affect resilience. Mm-hmm. And what it comes down to is the more stressed out our bodies are, the less flexibility we have in the face of stress, right? And so one of our tactics is to reduce the stress that's coming in. But another tactic that's so important to talk about is how do we improve our capacity? How do we, reduce our stress bucket, call it, right? Just help our bodies be able to tolerate the stressors that are coming our way.
Mm-hmm. So today we're going to chat about, which is related to this, is the focusing on food and anxiety. So what are some symptoms of anxiety?
Well, anxiety is, the hallmark of anxiety is fear for what might happen, right? The unknown, the future, like, but this may happen, this may happen. So what may happen in the future is by nature stressful because we just don't know. We can't possibly know, it's the future, right? So anxiety in my books is eroded resilience. If you can't go into something that's unexpected and feel okay and somewhat flexible, then your resilience is eroded. So that looks like so many different things for so many different kids. And, I used to really focus on behavior and learning and like really kind of categorize it that way. And then I realized that anxiety was really underneath so many of the things, like so many of the kids that are diagnosed with ODD and ADHD and ASD and like all the diagnoses. There's an underlying piece in there, which is eroded resilience and anxiety. So it can look like fear. It can look like aggression, throwing things like when the schedule changes, oh my gosh, right? Or you ask them to do something like that. These overreactions. It can look like sleeplessness and bedwetting and fears and phobias around separation. It can look like picky eating, being afraid of different foods. So I see the whole thing. It can be over excelling, right? Of like the perfectionist kids who just cannot get a bad grade and just, the overachievers. And it can also look like the underachievers who don't want to do anything because they think they're going to fail. And so they just don't even try. Right. So lots of different phases of anxiety. And so I really try not to harp on the word and just say like, listen, we just want our kids to be flexible in the face of stress. That's what we want for all of them.
I like that. What's the connection between food and anxiety?
So much connection. And this is what I just want to scream from the rooftops because we have a crisis on our hands with kids, right? Like kids are the anxiety is going up, the suicide rates are going up, the diagnoses are going up, the medications are going up. And if we really want to be serious about mental health, we have to consider food access issues and quality issues and the chemicals in our food. It is imperative. I mean, the simplest way to describe it or to explain it is to understand that nutrients from food, which we've evolved as humans next to food, which has on our planet, like this is the fuel that our bodies expect and require. The nutrients from that food fuel our nervous system. And our nervous system's primary objective is to keep us safe and to respond to stress. So if our nervous system doesn't have the nutrients that it needs, it's constantly getting the smoke alarms going off. It's like, threat. I don't have what I need. What do we do when we don't have what we need? We panic, we look, we're like, we try to find it, right? So our nervous system, whose job it is to respond to threat appropriately, is constantly being sent these messages of high alert and threat when it doesn't have the resources that it needs. And so that's the simplest way to understand the impact of food on the nervous system and on anxiety. But I mean, gosh, food feeds our gut bugs, and our gut bugs, influence how we feel, and food influences our sleep and our detoxification. And so there's all these, secondary pieces on how food directly affects anxiety. But that's the crux of it, is that we need to get these nutrients into our kids so that their nervous system can self-regulate, and so that they can do what we expect them to do, right? Sit and learn and listen and respond and communicate. And, if they're not able to do those things, it's a big signal that their nervous system doesn't have the nutrients that it needs to function well.
Yeah, one issue with, the whole childhood obesity epidemic is the intake of sugar. So how can sugar impact a kid's health?
So again, just like the simplest way to think about it is that sugar equals stress. Like, so much better off if you would stop trying to extract the sweet, right? And be able to put it in, like, there's beautiful whole foods that are naturally sweet. Bananas are really sweet. Even like bread is super sweet. Things sweet, or make sweet things even sweeter. And if we could just stop doing that, we'd be in much better shape as a species. But we're not going to stop doing that. So that's just sort of a way to think about it, is that sugar is one of the things that fills our stress buckets, because our body has to deal with it. Our body has to manage it, and our bodies do manage it. They have amazing ways of managing it. But enough is enough. Too much is really stressful. So if you have an anxious kid and you're trying to reduce their stress bucket, like we were talking about at the beginning, so that they can tolerate, what life throws them, sugar is a pretty important one to consider.
Yeah. One way we really recommend our customers when we give education about detoxing and then reducing chemical exposures is to avoid packaged food. And then, because we know a lot of packaged food have a ton of additives in it. And I know the additives also play a role in, children's health, particularly mental health. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it falls in the same category as sugar. I call this whole group of things anxiety accelerators. Like, I'm not going to go so far as to cause it, or they're a root cause. They're not. They're one of the roots. They're one of the pieces for a stressed out body, like a body that is primed for stress response. You want to get rid of the anxiety accelerators because you want them to calm down. So sugar is one, and additives is another. The additives are going to impact our capacity to create calming neurotransmitters. It's, again, just to keep it super, super simple, it's that I want parents to understand how messages of threat flow through the body. Whenever the body comes up with something that is like, well, I don't think we should be doing that, or that's not good. It's going to signal the nervous system to have a stress response. And it doesn't matter if that's like someone coming to attack you, or a car's about to run you over, or an additive that is not something that comes from the earth. It's just, our bodies don't expect it. Our bodies don't want it. Our bodies have to now do some work to detoxify it and get rid of it. And some of us are using detox systems. You talk about this all the time. Our detoxification system it's remarkable. Mm-hmm. But again, just so is our sugar management system. Like, wow. And the more I teach parents about their kids' bodies, it's like, wow, did you know that this is what happens? But enough is enough. It's filling up our stress bucket. And we do a lot of genetic testing with our kids, and we find detox pathways are sluggish across the board in all of them. And when you see that on paper, it's like, okay, you know what? You have a leverage point, because your child's body has a tendency to store and accumulate toxins versus, neutralize them and get rid of them. Mm-hmm. And if that wasn't the case, maybe you'd have a little bit more wiggle room with the additives and the chemicals. Mm-hmm. But as it stands, you got to get them out.
Yeah. Well, also often tell people, like, you should always reduce. Like, these chemicals have no business of being in your body. So they only do harm. They never do good.
They don't. and when I get parents who are like, but that kid's fine, or, because we like to compare, right? They're like, but so and so down the road like eats terrible, and here I am all organic and everything, and my kid's a basket case. So it's very tempting to do that, but a lot of it does boil down to genetics, because like you just said, additives are not good for anybody. But when you look at the biochemistry of it, when they come in, our bodies have ways of neutralizing and flushing them. That's why they can pass as generally recognized as safe, right? Because they've determined like, oh, you know what, we can neutralize these. But it's the cocktail of all, and it's the amount of all of them coupled with a stress bucket that is genetically smaller than the guy down the road, that's going to make them an anxiety accelerant for your kid, but not that kid.
Absolutely. So what are some things that you should look out for if you believe that it's time considering changing your kid's diet?
Well, I think we've touched on a few. If you want to, I mean, you could go the route of testing and doing programs like mine, but you can also just do some experiments on your own. And we've touched on two big ones, which are sugar and additives, just as an experiment. Take them out, but understand what we said at the very beginning, which is that their kids are in a stress cyclone. Stress begets stress begets stress. There are many factors. So, I've had folks come to me and say, well, I took out the additives and I didn't notice a big difference, so we just brought them back in. It's like, okay, well, because it's hard, right? It's like you say no to a lot of things with your kids, and it's shocking how many things you have to say no to. And as parents, you're like, the bus driver is giving my kid lollipops, and the teacher's this, and then it's Halloween, and then it's Valentine's Day, and then, so it is difficult. So that's, yeah, some parents will take something out, not notice a difference, and then put it back in. And what I have to explain to them is like, your child has a primed stress response. Their stress bucket is really full, and we can do a bunch of testing to find out exactly what's filling it. But if not everyone has the resources for all that testing. Additives they add stress. Like, they can't not add stress. So let's pull them out, and let's find creative ways of replacing those things and saying no thank you to certain things. It's challenging. We spent a ton of time in our coaching program, like navigating those interpersonal relationships, and how do you say no to the additives while also keeping your child's relationship with food intact, and not instilling a fear and danger and fueling the stress response that way, right? So it's delicate.
So these things seems to be like what parents really need to think about before eliminating any foods out of their kids' diet. It's also thinking about these relationships, and then not just like, bam, swapping out food.
Exactly. I mean, it depends on where you're at. Like, if you're in crisis, and like, I've had some kids come, they're like on the verge of going to an institution, or they're like, we're going to go on meds next. So if time is like of the essence, then you might want to just pull them out, because they have major leverage. But for the majority of people, I much prefer adding in before we take out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm frozen. Am I frozen?
Now you're back.
I'm back? Yeah. So I much prefer adding in before we take out, because when we do that, I call phase one of our roadmap is all about nourishing. It's all about establishing a culture of nourishment in your home. This is the way we do it. This is how we nourish our body. We're not fixing a child. Like, the child isn't broken. We are nourishing them. And so we talk about 5 different ways we nourish our kids. One of them is with real food. And we do it as a family. Everybody, like, hey guys, we are all going to up level our health, and we're going to nourish the heck out of our bodies for a little while, because we deserve it. Mm-hmm. And when we frame it that way, you're not saying no all the time.
I love this positive spin. That's also another way we trying to get people detox is oftentimes if you're being too negative, like kids or adults get stressed out, then they won't make a change. So having this positive spin, I think it's also really, really important, particularly for kids.
Well, in particular, like with anxious kids who are worried about the future, like we can't tell them that, you know, gluten is going to do this to you or additives are going to do this to you. Like that's for an anxious child is terrifying. So, hey, we're going to, this is more nourishing for us right now than this. So we're going to give it a go. We're going to.
Does this rule also apply to picky eaters? Because I know many kids are picky eaters, and then, you know, one thing they complain about is, okay, maybe texture. They don't like the texture of healthy food. What are some ways to help them get over the texture issue?
Yeah. So that's a good sign that the nervous system is stuck, right? Because that is our nervous system. Our senses is our nervous system. So the nervous system is stuck and over responding. So so again, back to what we were saying before, it's a good, now you're in another cyclone, right? Because you need the nutrients in order to not have the sensory issues, but you can't get the nutrients in because you got the sensory issues. So, you know, we got to break the cycle sometimes, and supplements sometimes really come in handy there if we can seek some of those in, and being a little bit sneaky can be helpful. So I would say patience is the first piece, because there's nothing that fuels the fire more than a stressed out parent who is like, just eat the food. So, you know, go to the bathroom, take a break, have a breath, come back, be tolerant, and be very supportive around food. Getting the culture of nourishment in place, enjoying food with your kids, eating with them, not having like their Kraft macaroni and your meal 2 hours later, whatever, like eating together. So there's lots of different pieces that go beyond just the food for the texture sensitive kids. Like, yes, you have to play around with it. Ask them about it. Talk to them about it. Is it because it's cold? Is it because it's mushy? Is it, you know, and with curiosity. I mean, curiosity is my favorite word. Just get curious. Be like, interesting. You didn't like that. Versus, what can I do? Right? You don't want to be the short order chef, and you don't want to be the catering to them. Be like, will you eat it if I want it? Will you eat it if right? Not about that. It's like, oh, that's interesting that you didn't like this texture. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Maybe we'll try it a little bit differently next time. And just keep adding.
Yeah, this is also, I feel like, treating your kids as a partner, right? Like, it's like you're equal part, you're discussing it. It's a lot of respect versus, okay, tell me what to do, or I'm just gonna do this for you next time.
You know, it's a good point, because I always come from the perspective that our kids are brilliant. Our kids, they are remarkable reflectors. If there's one thing that every kid does really, really well, is they reflect. They reflect like what's going on between the two of you, what's going on inside their body. So I am not of the opinion that kids are trying to manipulate you to get what they want. The fact is that processed food is very addictive. It's full of salt and sugar and additives and chemicals. So of course they want it, right? Of course they want it. And you probably would too if you didn't know a thing or two about nutrition and you're right. So, but they don't know that stuff. So we can't expect them to change unless we bring them into the conversation and educate them, find out what actually is important to them. With teenagers, this is super helpful. What's important to you? Because I guarantee you can bring it back to food in some way or another, right? So yeah, we are partners with them. We're their coaches.
I love this. So, I mean, people perceive anxiety differently. Can what parents perceive as anxiety really be a display of some other characteristics versus not really being anxiety?
Well, yeah, I mean, anxiety itself doesn't really tell us much about, well, what does that mean? It means there's a DSM value for it of like, you check the boxes, you have generalized anxiety disorder. But that doesn't tell you anything about what to do or what's causing it. I mean, is it issues with the GABA receptors? Is it issues with serotonin transport? Is it issues not enough nutrients? Is it just too much sugar? Is it you're reacting to a food? I mean, all of these things are pieces that contribute to filling up the stress bucket. So I don't think it's all that helpful to have labels, other than, sometimes with kids, when you get a label, you are able to access different services and different supports. And so then it can be helpful. But it's definitely not the end of your road, right? If you'd be like, oh, it's generalized anxiety disorder. Like, that's not the answer. It's not an end. Be like, okay, but now it's an invitation to get curious. Be like, okay, we have an overactive stress response. What's contributing to that? And how can we shift the messages of threat and fear to messages of common safety? That's where the
We had a question coming from our IG post for today's live. One audience asked, if you can only choose one thing, what's the number one change that you can make nutrition-wise to help with anxiety?
Oh my goodness. Bring in more plants, more whole foods than packaged foods. I think that would be my first. And if you're already doing that, then I would look at sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're already doing that, then I would look at the additives. And if you're already doing that, I would look at gut. Something going on in the gut. But I mean, that's a longer answer than the question asked for. But yeah.
Which bring me to the topic that, if somebody's sort of like trying to get down to what's going on, it'll be really awesome to get a consultation with you or join, your program.
Sure. I mean, I'd love to have you. I mean, we have a group of amazing parents. I mean, they come in. I do this as a group because, there's nothing worse than feeling isolated or like, what's wrong with my kid. That's the question they all come in with, like, what's wrong with my kid? And it's so helpful to be part of a group of people who are like, oh, we do that too, or we used to do that too, but now we do this, and this is how we've done it. So there is a fair amount of sharing in the group, but it's definitely guided by me and my team of what's actually rational, what makes sense for you. So we do customize it for each person. Be like, yeah, that was a good idea for her, but it's not a good idea for you. So we do it. It's a hybrid. Our resilience roadmap is a hybrid. We do very targeted plans for individuals, but then we also have a lot of general recommendations, like, how are you going to cut down the sugar? How much is okay? But what about high sugar fruits? So, what do we have to do about that? And what are alternatives? Like, is xylitol okay? Is aspartame okay? Like, all of these questions they come up. We've just basically compiled all of the questions. They're like, I know you're going to ask about this. And we put it in there. And so what we suggest is, like, we nourish first, and then we move into a phase 2 of reducing irritation and inflammation, whatever we can find that is causing inflammation. And if you want to do no testing at all, then we focus on chemicals, sugar, gluten, and dairy. If you want to go deeper than that, we've got testing available. But we want to get people to a point where they have a toolbox of tools that they know help reduce their child's stress bucket. You won't have to use them all the time, but you'll have to pull them out when stress gets high.
I love this hybrid approach. Not only you have the group support, but you also have very tailored and personalized, individualized support for parents.
And we have to take the family context into account, right? Like, if parents are working and kids are at school, or kids are going to camp, or, they have a nanny, or, there's 5 kids and there's like a lot to juggle, and there's budget issues. Like, it's a very different situation than trying to just change your own health. Trying to really shift the culture in your family and support everybody's nervous systems. Yeah.
You also have an amino acid with kids quick start program. So tell us about the importance of amino acids for kids and what this program entails.
Yeah, so I love amino acids. These are nutrients that come from protein, and you can take them as supplements, and they're great because they're the building blocks for neurotransmitters. So if we're trying to if we have a body that has messages of threat coming at them left, right, and center, then those messages are going to silence the messages of common safety. And the messages of common safety are carried by neurotransmitters, serotonin and dopamine and GABA, these sorts of things. So the amino acids are nutrients that can support those calming neurotransmitters. And so that's one way you can say, you can actually help the body feel calmer. Not just tell a kid, you're fine, everything's going to be okay, calm down, relax, breathe. But you give them the amino acids and they actually feel more calm because the messengers of common safety working on their behalf. So they're not the end of the story, but they can be a really great pressure valve for people, because when a kid is stressed, the whole family is stressed, you know, or vice versa. When the parents are stressed, parents can use these as well so that they can co-regulate better with their kids. But I think of them exactly like that, as pressure valves, just calm a little bit. So I pulled out some material from our resilience roadmap just for those families who just like, I just need something fast. They work quickly, but I just need something fast, just so everyone can breathe, because nobody is hearing anybody else. And I can't even think beyond like half an hour from now. So, yeah, so that's what the amino acid quick start is. It's like, okay, here are your choices. We talk about 5-HTP, tryptophan, GABA, and tyrosine, a little bit about melatonin, a little bit about N-acetylcysteine and inositol, which are kind of separate, but these are our tools. I guide people through exactly how to choose them and why they might want to try them and how to try them safely and how to dose them for their kids. And then, you know, then you can assess, you can reassess, you can look at all the other material and you can be like, oh, okay, so now which route are we going to chase? And so it can be great. It can be really great.
That's wonderful. I know you also have a really awesome book called Raising Resilience. Tell us about that.
Back there.
Nice.
Yeah, raisingresilience.ca is where you can find out all about it. It's on Amazon. I wrote it, 5 years. When I realized, okay, what I'm really talking about is resilience. So I'd already stopped teaching. I'd already been working with families and trying to simplify, you know, how do you feed your kids? I had 3 kids of my own and was realizing like how ill-equipped we are as parents. You really take interest, you know, to know how to feed your family. So that's what the book is sort of trying to just, it's actually, I was trying to distill like, here are the need to know pieces. There's a lot of insight in there, but the way I wrote it is, if you want the details, keep reading. If you just want to know what to do, skip over to page whatever, because I know the parent's mind. So yeah, that's another great resource if you have the bandwidth to read a book. There's that. But I basically took the material in the book. I've learned so much more in the last 5 years, which I've put into the coaching program.
That's it. That's so cool. Thank you so much for sharing all these with us today. It's such a wonderful program. I feel like this is almost supposed to be like a pre-parenting course that people should take before they even have kids.
Oh,
I know exactly what to do. You know?
Yeah, we have a group version where you can just go through the material. You can come to the coaching calls. You can get the support, but you know, you don't want to do the testing or the supplements or you just want to know how to feed your family. You can just go through the material. But yeah, unfortunately, we usually find these things when we're at a point of crisis and we're like, there's a problem. But I do get a lot of parents who have trouble with one child, but the younger kids are not there yet, but they want to be preventive about those. And that's another lovely thing about it is we're talking about the whole family. So you can apply everything to all your kids. And then maybe for this one who's having difficulties, we'll put together a specific protocol. But yeah, we can't really, I don't know why we try to do that. Like, I take one kid and like try to fix them. Like they're in an environment. Like we have to look at the environment, right? It's like, well, I mean, we do that with everything, right? It's like spraying the plant and not considering the soil, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, love this approach. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And thank you everyone for joining. So be sure to follow Jess at Ask Jess Sherman. And then we're going to include all the website. You will handle everything in the post promoting this live. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It's really great to just reach more people, and you've got a great thing going here. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye for now.